Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Flying Cat Marketing Podcast, but today we are in person. I have here Sançar Şahin, who's the founder of Oliva. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. I don't know where to look. Do
Yeah,
I look there
I guess we could just chat, the two of us, because it's true, we can't really see each other. Cool. So we were just talking before about your history as a marketer. You've been VP of marketing at Typeform, at Hotjar, and I think you have a couple other things under your belt.
Yeah. So, I mean, I fell into marketing, really, online marketing. I kind of many years ago when I lived in the UK, I was doing a lot of kind of freelance work in like freelance photography, copywriting, things like that. And before I knew it, I was kind of in the marketing trajectory. And it worked out. I did kind of marketing on a small scale for a startup in Barcelona called Trovit, which is a vertical search engine. And that was kind of divided up into countries. So people would work on country websites because it was global. And I looked after the English-speaking websites. And then I later was the head of content marketing for a company called GetApp, which was later sold to Gartner. And then Typeform, where I started the marketing team. We were a young, small company and kind of built that from scratch. And that was like a big journey, a lot of fun, a lot of stress. And then over to Hotjar, where I was VP of marketing. Hotjar was a similar stage when I joined as Typeform was when I left, if that makes sense.
So when you started at Typeform, was it just you on marketing at first?
Yeah, so when I started, I think there were about 30 people at Typeform when I started, and I think there are like 350 now. But yeah, the co-founders asked me to come along to basically start the marketing arm. At that point, it was a big focus on content marketing. We wanted to create an external voice and an external brand to what was already an amazing product. Mm-hmm. The product was growing almost exponentially from product virality. It was pretty incredible. Yeah. So it was an amazing remit for me as a marketer, because usually going into a company like that, the conversation is going to be come in, start SEO, paid search, like get us more leads, grow that, etc., etc. But the remit was completely different. It was, we're growing almost exponentially from product virality. Anything you do on SEO or paid or whatever is going to be a drop in the ocean on that. So let's start by creating a voice and a brand around this incredible product. So that was really fun for me because, and it was already funded to a certain extent at that point. So it allowed me to do some really interesting things. But yeah, so in terms of the company, when it was around 30 people when I joined, it was mostly engineers, product people, and there was kind of like one or two kind of marketing people who later, we kind of formed the marketing team together. We became a 25-person marketing team, more or less. But there was no official marketing team at that point.
So you scaled the marketing team. You said we're 3 people, and then we're going to be 25. You did all the hiring.
Yeah.
And before that, coming from a background of being more of a creative, like the copywriter, I think you worked in radio as well, right?
I did. I studied radio production at university, so I kind of dabbled in that area. Yeah.
So what was it like to build a team from scratch without experience of building a team before?
It led to burnout, ultimately, to be completely frank. Look, to be honest, I would love to say I came in with this amazing playbook. I knew exactly what I was doing, and every decision, good or bad, was a purposeful, deliberate decision. Yeah. And I'd love to kind of say all of those good decisions were because I strategized from the beginning, but it's not true.
How it works.
It doesn't work. Well, at least in my case, it didn't work like that. But I was quite green when I came into it. I think I had a few kind of stepping stones that allowed me to get into that position in the first place. But quite frankly, I had no idea what was about to happen in terms of the journey ahead of us. We scaled from 30 to 200 people pretty much within 2 years.
Wow.
We were in a small office at that point, and I just remember like the first few months we just had interviews happening. I keep looking at the camera as if like there's a person there.
There is a person there, the listener.
My weird awkward looks to the camera. But yeah, I remember like in the kitchen there were interviews happening, like on the sofa over there. We had one meeting room in this office at that point, and that was constantly booked up with interviews.
Wow.
It was just extreme growth in terms of user base, revenue, and employee headcount as well. So everything just happened very quickly.
Okay.
So I had to scale it, but I was constantly trying to keep my head above water, just learning what I had to do.
Because it sounds like at first you were responsible for the marketing plan and strategy, but then it's like, am I the team manager? Am I managing the people? Am I in charge of hiring the people, or am I in charge of running the strategy? Because those are three entirely separate roles that could be full time.
Yeah, all of the above.
Okay.
I mean, it's typical startup, right? There's everything to do, and there's not that many people to do it, and it's easy to say. And we made a lot of mistakes with hiring. You know, I think we hired too quickly as a company in general, and it's very easy when you've got some investment money in the bank to say, well, look at all of these things we've got to do. Look at this huge opportunity ahead of us. Let's hire people to fill those gaps and to own this and to own that channel and, you know, whatever it might be. But then you just spend your whole time hiring.
Yeah,
it is a full-time job to be hiring. So it was intense.
Yeah. So I do want to get to how these lessons that you learned building this team at Typeform helped you at Hotjar. But first, I'm actually really curious, since I work in content marketing. Sure. How you built this team specifically for content marketing, who were the different roles in charge of content marketing, and how that also helped grow Typeform.
Yeah, great. I mean, I could talk about content marketing. Like, that's where it all began for me, content marketing. So I'm a strong believer in content marketing. I think it can serve multiple different purposes across the customer journey. And I think if done right, it can become one of the kind of biggest moats for a brand, and also acquisition drivers for a brand as well. So yeah, I mean, the way we structured it at Typeform was, so we did invest heavily in content. So it was kind of like my first challenge, really, to get the content marketing part of the team up and running. So we had a in-house kind of editor-in-chief role. So we actually hired somebody with a journalism background. Somebody who kind of had experience running magazines and newspapers and could kind of bring that aspect to a startup, which was interesting. And then we had a team of writers. I think we had, I mean, it wasn't a huge team, right? But I think we had something like 3 full-time writers and then 2 copywriters in the end. So, you know, we were a sizable content marketing team. And then, of course, we'd work with a lot of freelancers. But we were also very fortunate to be able to build up an internal in-house creative agency.
Yeah.
So those teams were big partners, you know. So we would create very kind of, at least what we believe to be very kind of well thought out written content, but also we would pair that with beautiful design and
because you guys are it was a design company.
Yeah, and it was important, and that was kind of strategic, right? Because it wasn't just about, okay, let's do some cool startup things and let's do some really nice, you know, blog articles that people talk about. We knew from a very early point that the differentiator from Typeform was not its feature set, its data analysis capabilities, or whatever it might be. Quite frankly, we didn't compare that well compared to the competitors in terms of, like, you know, being a survey tool or a form builder tool, except for one thing, the UX and design of Typeform. So we knew we wanted to double down on that. So we did that not just through the product, but through our content and our marketing as well. That was a big thing. We had to show ourselves as the kind of forward thinkers in the space in terms of the form space.
That's really interesting. But when you were working with writers, how did you get the writing to show this design aspect?
So first of all, like, my main thing was to hire amazing writers, right? And I'm really lucky to have found some incredible writers.
That's hard to do.
It's hard to do, and the proof for me that they truly were those good writers is not just what they achieved at Typeform, but what they're doing now, and also the fact that I work with these people still now on a freelance capacity. You know, I'm constantly in contact with these people and, like, you know, doing projects as well. So these are people that I wanted to work with since the beginning. So that was the key. Like, find people who truly are excellent writers. And quite frankly, in my experience, you can find the best writers not from necessarily a pool of really experienced people in startups and business, etc. Often it's from people who have their own blog, and they just they write as a passion rather than as a job. And this is where you can find incredible people, and often they learn very fast, which was my experience with the team. So that was the first thing, like find very, very talented writers. Without them, like nothing else would have fallen into place, quite frankly.
I feel like I should be taking notes.
Higher talented writers.
Where to find them?
No, I mean it sounds obvious, right? But it really is the key. Like just find people with that raw talent. I think that's the hard thing to find, that raw talent.
I think my biggest challenge owning a content agency is finding these amazing writers.
Yeah.
And you have to find a lot of them, because when you find amazing writers, either they're going to be busy doing other projects, they're high in demand, so they don't actually have that much writing capacity. So then you have to find more of them.
Yes, and that's tip number 2 then, about the capacity, right? So another thing we kind of decided early on is that we were not in the game of quantity, we're in the game of quality. So we actually spent sometimes months creating just one piece of content, and I can think of a few kind of flagship pieces of content that we created that we took months on. Cost a bit of money. We put development resources, design resources into it, and they were by far our most successful pieces of content, and well worth the investment that we put into them.
And this was a blog post? What was it?
So a couple of examples. One, we interviewed the original voice of Apple's Siri, a lady called Susan Bennett, and it was just by chance. Like I was I think like I was using Siri on the way to work once.
You're like, who is this?
That's the thought process I went through, and then I thought because again we were trying to kind of become a voice in the conversational interaction space, essentially. Like we were trying to push this idea that the internet can be more conversational, right? I was thinking, okay, so Siri is doing exactly that. It's making this kind of automated digital experience more conversational. So I thought, okay, wouldn't it be amazing if we could speak to this lady? And obviously I thought, this is never going to happen. But I found her website. She had a personal website, and I just contacted her thinking, well, of course, it's going to go to like a automated agent or whatever. And literally within a few hours, she responded personally saying, happy to chat, let's organize a time. And organised a phone call, which was surreal, because when she answered the phone, when she said hello, I don't know if this is just me kind of like making it sound like this, but she sounded just like Siri.
Well, she's Siri.
Yeah, but then she doesn't actually sound like Siri, like in normal conversation. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, we managed to secure an interview with her. We did it professionally, like she has her own sound booth in her house, luckily, so she managed to get really high quality audio from her side. She's in the US, and then we rented a sound booth on this side so that our audio was really high quality. So we created a really high quality audio podcast type thing. Then we designed like this incredible interactive article experience, which created this interactive timeline of her career and how it kind of coincided with the advancements of conversational technology, because there were some other interesting stories from her past. And basically we just put a lot of time into this, a lot of writing, a lot of editing, a lot of design, a lot of development, and honestly I think a lot of kind of CEOs or whatever at that point would be like, just you can't do this, like let's
too much of an investment.
Let's write 50 500 word blog posts instead, but luckily that wasn't the case. And that was our first kind of big piece where we invested heavily into it, and that just exploded. Like it went pretty much viral. It got over 2,000 high quality backlinks without us asking for a single one, because a couple of news sites started referencing the interview and citing us as the original interviewer, and because of the interactive nature of the article, it just kind of exploded, and we actually won a content marketing award for that eventually.
Wow.
But there are a few other pieces like that where that first one, quite frankly, we were a bit lucky, and that allowed us to kind of say, well, look, we can keep doing this, and we did manage to repeat it on a few occasions with some interesting projects.
So it's actually not, it's content marketing on a very interactive scale, using all of the forms of content available.
And that's it. That's what content should be, in my opinion. I've always been obsessed with anyone who can like mix formats together. And I love it when this happens in movies or audio. I've been obsessed for a long time with the BBC and the New York Times used to do these. They don't do them anymore, which I think is a shame. But they did these like parallax stories. I don't know if you've seen these.
No.
So imagine, for example, like a series of photographs of the Beatles. And what they do is they slice the photos up into different layers, and they just create a slow parallax effect where they slowly move over the layers. So it almost looks like a video rather than a photograph. So they create this like interesting dynamic. So that's kind of one way that they mix the mediums. And then they have a voiceover talking about something. So it's like a documentary in a series of photographs. I just love like when people mix formats like that. And that's what I wanted to carry through to Typeform as well.
I think that's really interesting, especially I've been getting a lot more interested as well in businesses becoming media companies.
Exactly.
You know, exploring this artistic side and creative side that they have. And as well, I come from a writing background. I've always been a writer, a translator, so it's always just been text for me. And this year, I'm like, I want to try out other media forms as well, because it is interesting to mix. And as we were mentioning before, people do consume in different ways, and it gives you a whole different experience to be able to add all of those different media formats.
You hit the nail on the head with businesses becoming media companies, and we literally, like at the beginning when we were strategizing this, I remember giving a presentation where we put up GoPro, what's the horrible energy drink?
Monster? Red Bull?
No, Red Bull, thank you. Red Bull. You know, companies like this where they've made a success from becoming a media company.
Yeah.
And that was what we wanted to follow. And it wasn't really happening that much in SaaS at the time. It was happening like MailChimp have been a little bit...
I mean, it's harder because the ones that you mentioned, GoPro and Red Bull, those are B2C.
Exactly.
So it's not like we're generating leads with those. It's just getting popular.
But it was just so obvious. It was so obvious this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it was so obvious that the B2B would follow this, because branding is really, it's ultimately about psychology, right? And how you can make people react and feel to things. So why wouldn't that apply to B2B? It just doesn't make sense.
It's true. I mean, it seems obvious when you're saying it like that, but then presenting it to somebody who doesn't understand branding, or somebody who doesn't really get marketing so much, somebody who's a little more data driven, and what is this generating immediately? How do I attribute this? It's a little harder to present that. And
you can be data driven, right? And this is the thing. I think often the argument is always between, you know, are you data driven or are you brand driven? And I think this creates like a bit of a kind of dangerous rhetoric around it, you know, because I don't think it's one or the other. I think it often comes down to balance. And I've always liked to think of marketing spend, like my budget and my channels and my initiatives, as a portfolio. And I think like any good portfolio, you need balance. So if you have an investment portfolio, you probably haven't got a very strong portfolio if 100% of your investments are in low return but low risk investments. And the same if they're all in potentially high return but high risk investments, you also haven't got a healthy portfolio. So I think marketing is exactly the same. You need to find that balance, and when kind of debating with your CEO or whoever it might be, you need to kind of explain, look, think of this like a portfolio. Let me take a couple of high risks with potentially high return, and as we learn from those, then we can kind of put more of those into the mix, which was we were fortunate to be able to do, because we had a couple of good wins. We were able to kind of start introducing more of those things into the mix.
I remember you had left a comment explaining this concept somewhere on LinkedIn that I had saw, that you were saying, well, you need a balance. You do need that bottom of the funnel content that's just getting leads in, but you also need content that's explaining who you are, entertaining people, connecting with people. Okay, so now I want to move, because I wanted to tell this whole story actually about how you went from building these teams as essentially an employee at these companies, and you went to become a founder of your own company. So I guess when you moved to Hotjar, you had mentioned before the team was more developed than before, or were you starting again from scratch?
So in terms of company size, in terms of headcount, Hotjar was probably half the size of Typeform when I moved over. But in terms of things like revenue, like they were at a similar stage, a little bit further behind, but a similar stage. So Hotjar, like, I admired it because they were able to do that. You know, they were able to create like an incredibly healthy business in an extremely lean way, and being fully remote as well, which was really interesting to me. But yeah, in terms of if you think of the different stages of a startup, I think each stage, whether you call that pre-Series A or, pre-25 million ARR or 50 million, whatever, however you divide those stages up, the conversations and the topics and the challenges, I would say are quite similar across them, right? So when I talk about going to a company with a similar stage, what I mean is we weren't, it wasn't just me and a marketing team trying to do all of the marketing from scratch. That's a different stage. It was talking about OKRs, organizational structure, all of these kind of these topics.
Okay, so what was that like when you moved there?
Good. It was good. So I said earlier that when I started at Typeform, I was pretty green when I started. I was inexperienced, and there was a huge learning curve ahead of me across those 4 years that I was at Typeform. That was better than any kind of MBA, in my opinion. Any kind of degree. But going into Hotjar, I kind of went in with a bit more kind of confidence that I wasn't doing everything for the first time. Of course, some things for the first time, but not everything for the first time. And also, I was coming off the back of being quite burnt out at Typeform at the end. I just wasn't able to recharge my batteries anymore, essentially. So I had a little bit of time off. I managed to kind of get on top of that. And going into Hotjar, I just felt like, okay, I'm in a better place now, kind of mentally. I'm going into a role where at least I have some experience behind me. I've got a lot to learn, but at least I have some experience behind me. So it just felt like, okay, I'm in a slightly stronger space. Yeah. But and I guess we'll get to this, but I started to realize that although I felt in a better place, that wasn't the stage that motivated me the most. Yeah.
So are you referring to you actually wanted to be a founder of something yourself?
It was actually less I wanted to be a founder. That wasn't top of mind for me, that I want to be a founder. But I did do a lot of reflecting on... So literally my kind of mental model was, I've been in a position before where I've been so motivated every single day, I just can't wait to wake up and get onto my laptop or get onto a whiteboard. I've been there before with some companies and personal projects, right? So I knew what that felt like. And then I kind of started thinking, okay, so I haven't felt that for a while. Like I haven't had that where I just can't wait to get up and, my mind is just spinning and I just want to get something down on paper. I want to execute on that. I kind of got into this, the whole kind of trajectory of my career was a wave that I kind of got onto by accident. And I'm very fortunate and thankful for it, but it was never the plan. I never kind of thought I want to be this or this. So I just took a moment to kind of reflect and kind of consciously decide if that's what I wanted or if that's not what I wanted, rather than just kind of be taken along on this wave. And when I did that and took the time to reflect, I realized the thing that I enjoy most is early stage. Like I love just being at that early stage, like building things for the first time, like just taking nothing to something. Like that was the thing that motivated me. So my thought process from there was, okay, so like that's what I need to get get back to that feeling. And it wasn't about being a founder, it was about being early stage. But then I was very fortunate that kind of during the same time that I was having this realization, a friend and ex-colleague of mine introduced me to Javier, who was co-founder at TravelPerk, which is a pretty successful startup in Barcelona. And he was kind of ready to start his own thing. We clicked on many levels, and the thing that he was starting was just incredibly inspiring, and it went beyond SaaS products and business tools, and it was about mental health. So all of the stars aligned, and he asked me to join as co-founder, and it was just a no-brainer for me at that point.
So have you always been into mental health?
Have I always been into mental health? So
I know it sounds weird, but some people are not into mental health and some people are actively into it.
So I wouldn't say I've been I've not always done meditation and things like that. Like I've not, mental health has not always been top of mind for me. Let's put it that way. But going through my experience at Typeform, that's when I realized, because I consciously reached out to a therapist when I was starting to feel like that. The story I always share, I'll just very quickly share it, but like I went home one Friday, I think it was, and my girlfriend and I would often have a takeaway on a Friday, right? So I ordered the takeaway through an app, and it was a curry, and I ordered, what I thought I was ordering was chicken tikka masala, right, which is a nice tomato-based curry, right? But I actually ordered chicken tikka, which is just the bits of chicken.
Oh no!
Right, which is nice, but no sauce or anything. It arrived, I realized the mistake I made, and I just flipped out. I was so angry at myself for making this mistake. And then my girlfriend just looked at me and she's like, dude.
That's not a reaction.
It's just a curry. It's just a curry. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And it's just because like every little, it's like a tipping point, you know. It's like just a small thing can just make you feel super stressed. And I think if you don't have that space to have stressful things happen, or non-stressful things like ordering the wrong curry, then you need to kind of start to create that space for yourself. So that's when I reached out and looked for a therapist. That was super useful. That helped me kind of get to that better place in terms of moving on to another company and in life in general. And it was really from that point I was like, okay, this is valuable.
Yeah, it is so valuable. And I've been I've always been into mental health. I also studied psychology, and I've always been I've seen therapists on and off. Sometimes I went because I felt bad and I was like, I need this now. And other times it's like, well, I feel like, I could outsource some advice. Or just like get a little outside perspective. I'm really into it.
But as somebody who studies psychology, do you try and kind of help yourself, as it were?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm always trying to find ways to improve my mental health. Okay. I'm very active about it. But I realized last year, so as I started really growing Flying Cat, I completely prioritized the business to everything else. Yeah. And by the end of last year, I started having these thoughts like, I was doing things, I just didn't like it. I saw things, I was like, I can't even think, I can't even look at this right now. I started getting really slow answering emails. I was really losing motivation. Yeah. And then I took a break for Christmas. I completely turned everything off, and I started realizing it was so hard for me to say this, but when I put my intention for the next year, I said my health is more important than my business. Yeah. Saying that was very difficult. Yeah. I was like, I have to say it out loud to other people to make it real. You know, my health is more important than my business, and thinking about it in the way is, instead of growth at all costs, I'm going to grow, but it's going to be, brick by brick. Yeah. Brick by brick. And if you see somebody building a house and they're just putting brick by brick by brick and they never stop to eat or sleep or do anything else, well, the house isn't really going to get built, is it? Or it's going to look, there's going to be some pieces that aren't quite secure, or things aren't really going to work out. And if they eat well and sleep and then keep building it every day consistently, but still prioritizing their own health, then it's going to be a nice building. And I think it's really interesting that your experience in startups helped you be inspired to found this new startup.
Yeah, I mean, so many people are going through that same thing and have been through that and will go through that, right? I imagine you kind of recognize those signs, having studied this. Like, did you? Yeah.
I guess I'm not too bad at recognizing like thought patterns or things that I'm experiencing. But sometimes it takes too longer than I want.
Yeah, of course. But imagine, if you had kind of no idea about this. And this is the case for most of us, right? Where, quite frankly, I didn't recognize the signs. I thought this is normal. Like, it's a high pressure job. We're trying to grow, massive amounts. There's potential big upside for me. Like, of course, I should be stressed. Yeah. I shouldn't be not stressed. Really, there's something wrong if I'm, if I'm not stressed.
If I'm chilling, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, I think what I learned is it's not about being stressed or not being stressed, or getting stressed or not getting stressed, or avoiding stressful situations. It's not about that. It's about setting boundaries. And that's pretty much it. It's setting boundaries, whatever those boundaries are, and you have to constantly evaluate those boundaries and decide if they're still relevant for you or not, and whether that's kind of your working hours. You know, like people often talk about, well, you shouldn't work more than the next hour, but I just don't think it's realistic to say, if you're truly passionate about something, you're trying to grow something, it's fine to work more hours than the typical 8 a day if you want, but only if you've consciously set a boundary and you've said, I'm okay to do this, I'm not going to do it forever.
And I'm not going to do it to the detriment of eating healthy and exercising and sleeping.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you find that as a leader, when you have a team that answers to you, the boundaries that you set for yourself, do you think that that your team kind of replicates or takes that on? I mean, I feel like as a leader, I want my team to set boundaries and to make sure that they're taking care of themselves, but I feel like if I'm not taking care of myself, that maybe they're going to feel a sort of pressure.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you know, it's a cliche, right? But lead by example. So if you're kind of saying all of the right things, like don't overwork, make sure you take breaks, give me feedback, all of this kind. If you're saying the right things, but you're not leading by example, so you're working 15 hours a day consistently, you never take breaks, you answer emails on Sundays, whatever. If you do all of that, but you're saying the right things to people, the two things don't match up, and no one's going to believe you, you know. And I think this is part of the problem, right? I think startups especially breed this environment where people, you kind of throw everything at everybody, unlimited holidays and beautiful environments and all of this kind of stuff, and it kind of creates the wrong expectation. You start to, as an individual, you fill in the gaps. You're like, okay, so there's got to be a cost for all of this, right? And the cost is usually your own health and mental health especially. So yeah, I think it's really important to, you know, if you truly believe a boundary should be set or people should act a certain way or not do a certain thing, then you have to kind of live by that yourself. And it's not easy. I've definitely not been amazing at that. And then of course it's a challenge because then you have performance questions. Like you're a business, you know, you have to do performance reviews. People have to perform well. People need to grow the company. So you need to find a way to kind of marry these messages of take care of yourself. By the way, can you speed up a little bit on that, because we need that done. And that's why I think it's never about saying, you know, just make sure you take lots of breaks. You know, that's not what it's about. I think you need to kind of, it's about boundaries. You say, look, these are our expectations, and we expect growth, we expect improvement, we expect hard work, all of that kind of stuff. Here's a set of tools we offer you so that you can do all of that stuff well and consistently, whatever those tools are. Access to mental health care, time off, holidays, whatever. And if you need help, it's your responsibility to
take care
reach
of yourself,
out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to look after yourself as a responsibility. Like, it's not a good thing if you're coming in every day like feeling burnt out. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, it's hard to tell people like taking care of yourself, making it your priority responsibility to take great care of yourself. That's not exactly something that somebody can just tell you do that and then they're going to say okay.
No, it's not that easy for sure. It's definitely not that easy, and it's hard, right? If somebody's truly in a bad way, you can't just say look after yourself. Like, it doesn't work like that. And that's why I think the tools is really important. As a company, I think you need to decide what are the set of tools that we're going to provide to people so that they're better enabled to look after themselves. Ultimately, I think the responsibility needs to be on the individual. I think it should be for all of us as human beings to look after ourselves. And if we do that, if we focus on ourselves, everything else starts to fall into place.
Yeah.
You know, we have better relationships. We're just generally happier because we've set those boundaries. That means we're more productive at work, etc. So if we just take that time to focus on ourselves, everything else will get better.
I mean, it's a two-way thing. Even if, like, in a relationship, a romantic relationship, you can have somebody who says, I'm taking care of myself so that I could love you better, respect you better,
Exactly.
I don't know, and then you take care of yourself. But the other person has to do it. I could give them all the tools and say, I'll give you space, I'll start some emotional conversations, but they have to step up and do it too.
Exactly. And that's the kind of relationship I think needs to happen in the workplace as well. I'll provide you the tools. I'm here to support you. Like, reach out if you need help. I'll I'll walk you to the therapist if you want. I don't mind, whatever. But ultimately, it's your responsibility.
So can you put that into a hiring process somehow? Choosing, I mean, because like you said, it's interesting because like you said, this is very important, and I also want to be an employer that supports people and lets them grow into. But again, you have a business to run, and your core, as a business, your core priority isn't to, well, maybe for you, it is to help people with mental health because you provide the therapist. But for other businesses, our core the main thing that's driving us isn't to, make people get better.
Yeah.
So how do you know that you're hiring people that are going to be taking care of themselves, provided they're given the tools?
And that's the critical point, right? Your core business isn't looking after people, as it were. And that's why I think the responsibility of taking care of yourself needs to be thought of almost like you would assess somebody for their hard skills or other soft skills like management skills, etc. So you want to understand, is this somebody who knows how to set boundaries? I think, and there are ways you can kind of get to that answer. Is it somebody who's not afraid to reach out for help if and when they need it? And can they lead by example? And I think if you can introduce those aspects into your hiring, you're going to create the right culture. But I do genuinely think it's the wrong thing to, and I've seen this mistake being made. I've been part of this mistake. I would say we made this mistake in the early days of Typeform, that if you focus on just caring for people and wrapping them in cotton wool and making everything nice and making everything easier, then that's ultimately going to be the thing that leads to good things. But ultimately, people want purpose at work.
Yeah.
They want to enjoy coming in every day, and they want to be treated fairly and with respect. We are not all experts at how to do this for people when it comes to mental health care. So I don't think it's the right thing to suddenly become a psychologist in the workplace and try and guess what people need. So I really think it's about providing a set of tools and maybe adding to that toolbox over time, setting the right boundaries and expectations, and then just kind of, that's it.
And I think what helps as well, so you're obviously a lot more experienced than I am in building teams and managing the teams, but what I am thinking and approaching in my team building is not just providing them the tools for self-help and personal life and those kind of things, but also the tools in the sense of clear ownership of responsibilities, very defined roles. And I think that one easy way to, I feel like I'm just speculating because I haven't built a huge team. My team is very small, but, and it's the first team that I've built because prior to building Flying Cat, I was a freelancer, a team of one. So this is speculation, but what I'm thinking is one reason that in startups we have this hustle culture, it's hard to set boundaries because people are just wearing way too many hats and have way too many responsibilities, and then people feel this huge burden that they have to not only perform, which yes, of course you have to perform, but they have to perform in all of these things.
I think we have to get out.
All right. Okay, we gotta go. That was a very interesting conversation. We did go over time. We got really into it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what time it is, but...
when you get thrown out of the meeting room, that's over time.
Thank you so much for
You're
spending
welcome.
this time with me. It's been very enlightening.
Happy to continue the conversation another time.
Yeah, for sure. So if people are very inspired by this conversation, where's the best place for them to get in touch with you?
Probably LinkedIn these days. I'm not that active on social, to be honest, so LinkedIn's probably the best place. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching or listening or however you are experiencing this conversation. And if you liked it, of course, share it with friends and colleagues. And I'll see you in the next one.
Bye.